Our mind is very associative. It always associates our ideas, thoughts with something else. In childhood, we learn things by associating them with something else. Imagine your childhood when you were imitating to your parents and tried to understand the world around you, what you did or what we did. Let's have an example. When a child was told that this is a cow, what he does? He observes. His brain highlights the unique features of that animal and records it. And when next time he sees a cow, he associates the pre-recorded object and compare it with this new one. If his brain signals him that yes, the features are same, he utters cow, cow. If not, then he just nod in negation. No, it's not a cow. But suppose the child knows what does mean by cow. Okay. And then we put a buffalo before him. He will say that it is not a cow, but seems cow-like. Yes, this is the very thing I want to convey. Our brain associates and understands the similarities as well as differences. Compare and contrast. This one will be the key to decode the meaning of our word. Now take an example. How similarities works in this function. Here we have a set of similar words. Fort, castle, mansion, bungalow, home, hut and a shed. Fort, castle, mansion, bungalow, home, hut and shed. Now every word conveys the idea of dwelling place. These are the things where we can live. So a kind of similarity is there. On the basis of this similarity, we form a chain of words. These words are tightly interconnected with each other. To understand the word home, we need to understand its position between bungalow and hut. So now, home is a thing which is neither bungalow nor hut. If we remove bungalow, then we consider home something between mansion and hut. Okay. If we consider home something between mansion and hut, and suddenly we see a bungalow, most probably we may misjudge it and say that it is a home, which is incorrect. In nutshell, what I want to say that to get the meaning of the word, we must increase the list of such types of similar words. Number of similar words gives you an opportunity to associate them to each other. And by this association, we can get the proper comprehension of the word. Even dictionary makers realize the fact, and in many dictionaries they provide us thesaurus. It means a list of similar words. So to say it briefly, I just want to convey that we must gather maximum synonyms in our memory, because synonyms are vital. They indirectly describe each word. Okay, now just recall what has been discussed by us. Number one, we discuss how to know the literal meaning of word. That's signifier and signified thing. Secondly, remember the reference and context. That language is always referential and contextual. Thirdly, we discuss a type of languages in which the expression is expressed. And we also had seen enrich yourself with a list of similar words, that is synonyms. Now talking about the next point, that is antonym, opposite word. Before going through into this point, let me share some interesting information with you. Claude Lévi-Strauss, he was an anthropologist. He studied myths, mythology and archetype. So Claude Lévi-Strauss, in his study, what he finds is very interesting. He discovers that Indian and Greek civilizations are among those few civilizations in the world which have abundance of myths and mythology. Both are very rich in this kind of literature. And in ancient time, it's not possible that these two countries had ample communication to share their literature, theological scriptures or mythological literature, etc. So it was very difficult at that time. If you see or read and listen the stories from Greek and that from Indian mythology, you will find that there are so many similarities, as if both civilizations are same, like in a parallel universe. For instance, as we have Indra, god of gods, they have Zeus. If they had Cupid, we had Kamadeva. They had Neptune and we had Samudradeva, sun god, there is Suryadeva and there Apollo, and so on. I can count hundreds of similarities between these two separate independent mythological universes. Now the question is, why there are so similarities these both cultures share? Their and our narratives have a similar narrative pattern recurrent all over their oral literature. Now, you may feel a bit philosophical, but I try to put in a simple term. The answer behind this remarkably interesting question is very simple. Now, you may feel a bit philosophical, but I try to put in a simple term. The answer behind this remarkably interesting question, that why there are so many similarities between their culture and ours, the answer is very simple. And the answer lies in a phrase which we may call binary opposition. Binary opposition, yes, basically human brain works on this binary opposition. We think in binary opposition. We perceive this world in binary opposition. Each and every human creation is an output of this binary opposition. Now, what is binary opposition? It is thinking about two diverse ideas altogether. We think of night in the light of day. For us, day exists because night is there. Night has its existence on the very opposite idea of day. Without day, we can't understand night, and vice versa. For us, day is a day because it is not day. Day is a day because it is not night. That's why day is a day. Table is a table. Listen, this table is a table not because it is a table. Rather, table is a table because it is not chair. The opposite explains each other. Our brain understands in this opposition. And our understanding has been recorded by the brain in form of verbals, and that is language. Our whole world has been recorded by us into the system, that is language. So certainly language reflects the very notion of binary opposition, two contradictory ideas, two opposite ideas which are encapsulated in the words. So every word could be understood with the help of its opposite idea, that is antonym. In language, there are and there always be a pair of two opposite words. If there is long, then there is short. If there is I, then there must be you. If there is man, then woman is there too. So it seems rhymed. We understand man by contrasting it with woman. Imagine if there is no woman, then how can we define man? Imagine if there is no light, how we say what darkness is? Opposites that are determiners. No doubt they are. They throw lights on their counterparts. As in our cinema, hero is good only because villain is bad. Without villainy, there is nothing like heroism. So now, within the context of our topic, in decoding word, we have to follow same structure. If you really want to get an exact meaning, just compare that word to its opposite. Opposites explains opposite. That's why antonyms are important to build our vocabulary. Enrich your vocabulary with antonyms. They will make you understand their opposite. Or let me put it another way. Take the same example of dwelling places which we see earlier. Fort, castle, mansion, bungalow, home, hut and shed. Now consider this. Now home is home because it's not anything other from the list. It is not a fort, it is not castle or mansion or bungalow, it is not hut or shed. That's why it is home. This contrast is also a kind of opposition. There is a difference among them. That difference does not explain the word itself, rather it explains the others. So, to conclude this point, I just want to emphasize the significance of opposite word. Be sure when you read a new word, find and comprehend its antonym. Now just recall what we had seen. Firstly, we realized that the literal meaning of the word is the base, knowing the signifier and signified, sound and object and all that stuff. Secondly, we had seen, we also understood that language is referential and contextual. Hence, some words can be used with different meaning as per the context. Then we had seen that it becomes necessary whether the word is used in standard language or in a dialect or in a jargon. And again, we discuss about we may provide ourselves full developed list of similar words, that is the list of the synonyms. And we also discussed that we must not forget how the opposite idea is crucial. So understanding the antonyms. Okay, just discuss couple of things more. The sixth point that I want to discuss is very interesting too. Dear participants, we the people of this world, irrespective of caste, creed and race and religion and everything, we are the denizens of very complex and uniform structure of human society. We humans have the history, we evolved, still we are evolving, yet we are connected with each other since time ancient. We cannot escape from the things that we have from our primitives. We as a human race constructed a unified history. As a human, we share some equal notions, some similar ideas. Something is pre-programmed in us. We have the collective unconscious, and that this collective unconscious is important while interpreting the text. How? It is important for understanding the language, for decoding the word. We all share similar thoughts and we attribute them to an idea. Words who carry such ideas become symbols. When we read a particular text, many a time that text demands that we must crack the symbolic meaning as well. If we fail, then we merely have the literal meaning of the word and we fail to understand the true sense of it. Decoding the symbolic meaning makes you the master of language. I think this is the highest watermark of the learner of the English language or of any language. If the learner, he understands symbolic meaning, he can understand everything. Let's take an example. A snake stings me. This is a very simple sentence in which a snake means an animal, a poisonous animal who generally sting people. Now, if you are using it after some person did something wrong to you, a snake stings me, suddenly the meaning of the snake becomes symbolic. The meaning becomes symbolic. Now, that snake, it's not an animal. It is a symbol of the quality of the cunningness. And everyone easily understands it. In our collective unconscious, we all share this symbol of cunningness for doing harm. If you rely on the literal meaning, probably you are missing the beauty of language. You must understand the symbolic connotation, symbolic implication. It suggests something deeper than mere literal meaning. Very complex, yet achievable. I think I am taking too much time. So let's have the final point briefly. Dear listeners, every one of us has his or her unique personality. This uniqueness is because of how we get nourished by our parents. Our values, religion, ethnicity and everything around us have drastic influence over our development. How was our schooling? How were our teachers, friends and acquaintances? What we read? Literally everything contributed to construct our personality. We were alike when we born, but due to all the surrounding, we become we. I become I. Yes, you are different than me as I am to you. We all are different and matchless to each other. So what I speak or write is the reflection of my personality, is the reflection of my individuality. My expressions are my own in a very distinct way, as well as it is true in your case. If my expressions are unique, customized by me to communicate, the language I use is also customized for my use. You customize yours. We reflect ourselves when we use verbal expressions. The sentence construction, the choice of word, the way of speaking, everything is individualized by us. Language has given us that privilege to use it as we want. I think this is the most beautiful part of our discussion. Think how language has given us the privilege to use it as we want. Now, I use the word in my own way, in my own fashion. And if you want to understand the word that I use, you must understand my individual personality. At least you must know how I develop my thoughts, or what kind of ideology I have, etc., etc. But it is equally true that without knowing me, you can't know the word I use. Every word spoken or written by me, yes, my words, my language, is a reflection of my personality. Every writer has his own style of employing words into their expressions. That's why we have so many writers writing in the same language, yet different in their expression. Okay, to clarify it, just take an example. John Keats, he was an English poet of Romantic era, and in his poem, that is Ode to Nightingale, he writes, "I have been half in love with easeful death." I repeat, I have been half in love with easeful death. Now the meaning of this sentence is very weird, no? How can someone love death? But Keats did. His life experience made him to think so. And he reflects it in his poem in this particular line. He lost his mother and father in his early age. Sudden after their death, he lost his beloved brother. He lost his love. He got tuberculosis. And after writing this poem, he died at the age of 26. He was young. Too young to die. If we know about him, about his individuality, his personality, we can easily gain the meaning of death. For him, here death is escape. He wants to get rid of from the sorrow, the grief, the dejection. So in short, if you are listening someone or reading something, never ever go away from the owner of those words. This will give you a fair chance to get the exact meaning of the words. Yes. And this is the art of decoding words. I tried my level best, and I thanks to Dr. Shrikant Patil sir and Dr. Durgesh Kunte sir for giving me such an opportunity. Thank you very much.